For some reason, everyone always asks the question, what if Germany won World War I? But nobody ever asks the question, what if Austria-Hungary won World War I?
Stay off the weed!
So move over, Kaiser Boos. It's time for the true Giga Chads of the Central Powers to get their time to shine. Welcome to the world of Doppeladler. Since Metternich's disastrous policy blunders at the Congress of Vienna surrendered the rich Low Countries for diddly squat, the 19th century was a series of humiliations for the glorious Habsburgs. Prussia knocked them out of Germany, the Hungarians forcibly split Austria in two, and disgusting, Italy unified.
That back there is not real!
They were no longer a true great power, highlighted by the 1878 Bosnian expedition. Outnumbering the Ottoman-backed resistance 2-1 with superior weapons and training, it should be easy, right? Wrong. Austria needed over 2 months to conquer the measly little Bosnia, an absolute humiliation that should have been a wake-up call to modernize, but they ignored the warning signs, instead increasing their dependency on Germany. The 1903 May coup in Serbia replaced the friendly Obrenović dynasty with the antagonistic Russophile Karađorđević dynasty, turning their closest Balkan ally into a despondent enemy. To make things worse, the treacherous Serbs worked with numerous terrorist groups to stir up unrest in Bosnia and Croatia, as they feared the looming reforms of Franz Ferdinand would placate the Habsburg Slavs, destroying any chance of the Serbian-dominated South Slav state. Tragically, on July 12, 1914, a Serbian terrorist, Gavrilo Princip, murdered Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Despite the numerous calls from Austria-Hungary to have an actual investigation, which would uncover Serbia's guilty part in the assassination, the indignant Serbs cried out to Russia to support them, refusing to cooperate for the just Austro-Hungarian request. As war beckoned, Germany forced Austria's hand with a blank check of support, fueling the pro-war party in Vienna. Thus, the Great War commenced. 40 million casualties later, the Central Powers lost.
The age of
Habsburgs
is over. The time of the
Slavs
has come.
Sadly, Austria-Hungary collapsed as numerous states were created from the disparate groups, and including Austria, they all turned their backs on the Habsburgs.
But you can't do this to me. I started this company. You know how much I sacrificed?
But fear no more, you were 50,000 loyal Habsburgers and the 90% of dangerous, treacherous Serbs who have yet to subscribe, as Austria-Hungary took Bosnia as a much-needed wake-up call. Either catch up now, or be left in the dust by our powerful neighbors. Well, besides Italy. Nobody's scared of them. The clearest example of Austria being antiquated was their military welfare laws, which hadn't been updated in forever. The thinking was simple. The state demands your service, and in return, you get, well, repaid, sort of. It's all about reciprocation, right? Except it wasn't. Your husband gets skewered on a battlefield? Sorry, ma'am, the government is not cutting you a check. Pensions? That sounds like communism. Ugh. Here, they overhauled the laws fast, copying them from Germany. By 1900, they modernized, boosting conscription and sweetening the deal for privates and officers alike. Every enlisted soldier got a slice of the welfare pie. And suddenly, the army's not just a meat grinder, it's a career. Imagine that, a Habsburg army where you don't have to die broke. Historically, as Gunther Rothenberg laid out in The Habsburg Army in the First World War, 1914 to 1918, this force was a mess in 1914. Despite a 40% population boom from 1870 to 1914, the military grew a measly 12%, and their budget was way behind the other powers. Austria-Hungary ranked behind only Germany and Russia in population, but spent a quarter of what they did, a third of Britain and France's budget, and even less than Italy. Here, though, that changes big time. Military spending jumps, closing the gap to Russia and Germany. Austria historically was able to field world-leading artillery and small arms with weapons like the Skoda 3055 and the Mannlicher M1895, respectively. But Rothenberg noted the Habsburg artillery was underpowered, 42 pieces per division versus Russia's 48 or Germany's 54. Here they matched Germany's 54 pieces per division during their steady modernization, leading the world in many artillery pieces like howitzers, not just heavy mortars. The old three-army headache, the Austrian Landwehr, the Hungarian Honved, and the Imperial Common Army, which Alan Sked called the Achilles heel of dualism, got streamlined too. No more political migraines from the Hungarian grumbling. The commands merged into a joint ministry after Bosnia, centralizing everything. The national armies didn't vanish outright, that'd be a sovereignty gut punch, but they faded into National Guard roles, feeding a beefed-up imperial army. With one unified force, the military command improved, as the top cadets were trained together, as a new generation of commanders were educated on the newest military stratagems. The military investments juiced up the Habsburg economy, starting with railways. Historically, Austria-Hungary had built up pretty good infrastructures, especially Hungary, who was economically thriving. There was one teeny tiny issue though. Their railways were a logistical nightmare, barely connecting because each side had to be different than the other one. Here, none of that nonsense happens, it's all scrapped. They built an imperial network designed for efficiency, not ego, linking Budapest to Vienna like a well-oiled machine. And here's the kicker. Germany doubled down on the Berlin-Baghdad railway, dumping investments into the Habsburgs that finished before the war even kicked off. This wasn't just a train track, it was a trade superhighway, flooding Austria-Hungary with wealth. The result? The Habsburg economy industrialized at warp speed, churning out goods and steel faster than you can say schnitzel. But it was not all rosy across the empire. These railways shook things up differently in Austria and Hungary. Over in Cisleithania, the Austrian side of the empire, as John David Deak stated in Forging a Multinational State, the rail boom echoed the old Maria Theresa versus nobility power struggles. But now with centralism, imperial authority, versus regionalism, minority parties or local nobility duking it out. The tracks became arteries for investments and urbanization. Vienna ballooned to 2 million, the fourth biggest city in Europe, while Bohemia, Moravia, and Styria turned into manufacturing powerhouses. Cities like Fiume, Krakow, and Lvov rapidly grew, as did their people's call for rights. Bigger cities meant more liberalization, more voters, and a step-by-step march to universal male suffrage. In Hungary, those same rail networks sparked national consciousness, weakening the Magyar position. Croatian calls for a third kingdom in the Balkans got louder, threatening to splinter the empire's unity. So, while Vienna was pleased, Budapest feared the worst as tensions mounted between the two capitals.
I don't get nervous, but I'm starting to get a bit shaky, you know? I mean, I'm a little bit weak.
Trade's where the real magic happened, though. Historically, as Alan Schked pointed out in Historians, the Nationality Question and the Downfall of the Habsburg Empire, the 1867 Compromise forced Austria and Hungary to renegotiate their economic compromise every decade. Tariffs, trade, and the quota were a constant slugfest between the two. The increased military cohesion led to free trade agreements between the two, as those bicentennial shouting matches got streamlined into a joint economic ministry. Now Austria and Hungary's economies mimic the states' economies in the US. They couldn't tariff each other, but controlled some of their own finances. The regional governments throughout Cisleithania had some degree of control over their own taxes as well. With the economies integrated like a well-choreographed waltz, boosting stability and pouring cash into the coffers, more money meant a stronger army. The Habsburgs weren't just keeping up with the Joneses, or in this case the Hohenzollerns, they were outpacing Russia, turning the dual monarchy into a lean, mean, industrialized fighting machine. Less tension, more treasure, and a military that was ready to roll? Austriae est imperare orbi universo. All the world is subject to Austria.
Hey, come on, baby! Come on! Yes! Come on! Ah! Yes!
The often overlooked Empress Elizabeth dodged the freak assassination attempt that historically was a perfect storm of bad luck. Elizabeth was a liberal breath of fresh air compared to Franz Joseph's stiff conservatism, and she loved Hungary. Seriously, she was their biggest cheerleader. Here, she didn't just survive, she stepped up as the ultimate go-between, smoothing tensions between her husband and the Magyar hotheads during the 1905 Hungarian crisis. As Croatians were becoming richer and more industrialized, Hungary felt the emperor pushing for a third crown, something totally unacceptable to them, so they voted in droves for the Party of Independence in '48, which won a majority of the parliament, igniting a political crisis. Deputies got booted from the parliament by troops, and there were even orders, never historically executed, for an imperial invasion as Franz Joseph appointed General Géza Fehérváry, the captain of his Hungarian bodyguards, as the new prime minister, ignoring the election results, declaring a crisis in Hungary.
I am the Senate.
With more pressure from Croats, eager for independence, the imperial army marched in, occupying Hungary in 1905, and Elizabeth brokered a deal. The Hungarians dropped their wilder demands, like independence, which was just never going to happen, economic autonomy, and restrictive franchise laws, but assuaged the independence crowd by amplifying their vote. She nudged the franchise closer to Austria's 1896 law, so instead of only 7% of Hungary being able to vote, she pushed through a schedule for absolute male suffrage, which would let Slovaks, Croats, Romanians, and Poles into the game. Ironically, conservatives throughout the empire like Edward Franz Joseph von Graf Toff, 11th Viscount of Toff, and Casimir Felix Hrabi Baden were the ones who supported the suffrage measures, wanting to expand their electoral base to include more non-Germans and non-liberals, while many liberals opposed it as they could already vote. With Hungary already under total military occupation, Franz Ferdinand, the heir apparent, convinced Franz Joseph to force through trialism now that he had a chance. Thus, the Kingdom of Croatia was formed from the Habsburg Balkan territories. and a rush-through vote was passed by the Kingdom of Hungary as many Hungarians boycotted in protest, while the nearly 50% of the population who were not ethnic Magyars supported the measure, hoping to one day receive a similar result. While the Magyars grumbled, a full-scale revolt was off the table. They were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. More voices in government meant more conservative and minority support for the crown, stabilizing the army and the economy. Goodbye Austria-Hungary. Hello Austria-Hungary Croatia.
Actually turned around, guys. We are back, baby. We are back. We are back.
While things internally were much better for the triple monarchy, external events played out the same. Serbia was still antagonistic, even more so here, as they felt the need for drastic actions to win over the increasingly loyal South Slavs. Franz Ferdinand was still assassinated as World War I began. This time, however, the Habsburgs were ready. Serbia and Montenegro were nothing but a speed bump for the empire. The evil bastards were crushed by the full might of Austria, Hungary, and Croatia in the name of their fallen lord, Franz Ferdinand. The remains of the Serbian army fled south, but Albania was waiting for them, picking off thousands of fleeing Serbs. The dream of Yugoslavia was thankfully dead. The rapid victory was not all that unexpected, but not without its own issues, as Bulgaria began pressuring Austria-Hungary Croatia to cede Serbian lands. Marvin Fried noted the real-world tension between Vienna and Sofia in Austro-Hungarian War aims in the Balkans during World War I. Clashes over Serbia nearly tanked their shaky alliance historically. As they obliterated their pesky foes without Bulgaria, Austria refused the initial Bulgarian demands despite German insistence, the first crack between the Prussians and Austrians. Eventually, the new Serbian government, led by the restored Obrenović dynasty, was forced to sign the humiliating Treaty of Sarajevo, reminding the Serbs that their actions led to their demise. The new government admitted Serbia's responsibility for the murder of Franz Ferdinand and accepted complete blame for the conflict. Serbia was reduced to an Austro-Hungaro-Croatian puppet with a shared customs union. Multiple lands were stripped away to further weaken the state. Sanjak, separated from Montenegro, and Shabac both went to Croatia, while Hungary received Negotin, which would later be colonized by German and Hungarian farmers. Most painful of all, though, was Belgrade, the Serbian capital, which was given over to Croatia. Kosovo was stripped from Serbia, while Montenegro also became a Habsburg protectorate. Their coastline was stripped away to protect Croatia's naval base in Kataro. While a positive for the triple monarchy, they had to clear out the Serbs from land to make way for colonization, so many atrocities were sadly committed. Albania was a matter of national security for Austria, as Fried said. An independent, unified, and stable Albania seemed crucial for Austro-Hungarian policymakers for securing their influence in the country, extending their reach beyond the Adriatic, giving Montenegro and Serbia another hostile country on their flank. Albania, essentially under Habsburg occupation, once Prince Wilhelm returned, gave the Habsburgs the important port of Vlora, enabling them to control the Adriatic and push their influence far further throughout the entire eastern Mediterranean. To appease the Bulgarians, as there were fears that they could join the Entente, eastern portions of northern Macedonia were begrudgingly divided between Bulgaria, Albania, and Greece, keeping all three neutral. Thanks to their gift, Bulgaria warned Romania they'd grab Dobruja if they tried to invade Transylvania, shoring up Hungary's borders. The Balkan success had little to no ramifications on the Western Front. Germany was bogged down in a muddy stalemate, though it seemed poised to crush the French in the spring as Paris was in sight. As news arrived of the total Habsburg victory, German morale was raised, as many soldiers had doubts over their allies' strength, with this relieving any fears that they were tied to a sinking ship. For Italy, the pro-neutrality faction was ignored, as Britain and France went above and beyond in their offer to the Italians. The two worried Austria would redirect their focus on Russia, knock them out with Germany, and crush France to quickly end the war. Hoping to avoid this, they promised Italy an unbelievable haul. South Tyrol, Istria, Dalmatia, Albania as a protectorate, Anatolian gains, Jerusalem, but more importantly, Tunisia and Corsica. To some Italians, the totality of the Treaty of Sarajevo reignited fears that Austria would attack them once Russia and France were vanquished, retake Lombardy Venetia, and restore their Habsburg cronies to rule over them once more. Although Austria didn't actually have such designs, outside of a fringe minority who wished to return to the 1858 Italian borders, pro-war propaganda flooded people with this assertion. After all, Vienna was clearly angered when they didn't beckon the call to war with Serbia, so why delay the inevitable? Join the Entente while you still have a chance, rather than bear the brunt of Habsburg brutality alone. Instead of realizing that France simply wanted to use Italians as bodies to throw at Austria, King Victor Emmanuel III was all in. Italy was going to war.
Oh, scary! Oh, shiver my timbers! Shut up, man!
Back east, the initial Russian push into Galicia yielded minor gains, but the superior Habsburg railways allowed for a quick response, so troops deployed there before their Russian counterparts. Despite a strong performance against Serbia, Britain and France still doubted Austria, expecting Russia to steamroll through Galicia.
Who is it you think you see? No, you clearly don't know who you're talking to, so let me clue you in. I am the danger.
Russia still made diminutive gains in Galicia, while Germany and Austria did likewise in Poland, but the tide soon pushed as news of Serbia's collapse flooded the front. Morale was greatly lifted, while more importantly, hundreds of thousands of troops poured north, pushing the Russians out of Galicia. Due to the reinforcements, Austria captured Warsaw from the Russians, giving them control over Poland's two most important cities as they also held Krakow, meaning the future of Poland was essentially in Habsburg hands. Suck it, Germany. The Germans were not especially pleased by the Austrian push, having hoped to instate a German prince on the Polish throne, while any Habsburg designs could ruin their ambitions. Although the two never had any explicit conflict over Poland, Austria made it very clear that none of the German-backed candidates were preferred by Vienna, and although some within the Triple Monarchy proposed adding Poland as a fourth state, predominantly pushed by Hungarians, hoping their kinship with Poland could prevent Austria and Croatia from pushing further concessions, Emperor Franz Joseph opposed such a move. Many local Poles, either from Galicia or Congress Poland, supported Austria's aims, as they remembered how much better the Habsburgs treated Poles compared to the tyranny endured under the Hohenzollerns or Romanovs. Pretty soon, a relatively unknown but rapidly anti-Russian Pole emerged, Józef Piłsudski, who rallied Poles into the Polish military organization, sowing chaos across the Russian lines and working with Austria. Once Italy entered the war, Austria initially stopped their advances, wondering about the strength of their Italian counterparts, but it quickly became apparent that they were dealing with the most incompetent force since France in the Franco-Prussian War.
You want to see me do it again?
With no fear of an Italian breakthrough, most of their Alpine troops moved to the east. After all, one Austrian was good for at least 3 paisanos. With 2 tip-top armies fighting against them, this war was turning into a repeat of the Russo-Japanese War from a decade earlier.
Oh no! We suck again!
Unlike the Triple Monarchy, who learned their lesson from Bosnia's hardships, Russia had failed to substantially reform, and now it was costing them dearly. Nicholas II's troops didn't catch a break as the Central Powers pushed on, but Poland put Germany and the Habsburgs on edge as their trust in each other dwindled. To make matters worse, when the Central Powers pushed, it was the Austrians who took Wilno, not the Germans. Scaring Berlin, the Habsburgs would attempt some Frankenstein's reincarnation of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. But all outward signs between the two remained positive. By the year's end, the Habsburgs amounted for roughly 75% of the Central Powers' troops on the Eastern Front, as they were effective enough to slowly push the Russians back, freeing good Prussians to vanquish the French. This came at a cost for the Germans, though, as Austria increasingly pushed their allies north, expanding their own reach while leaving Germany with essentially just the Baltics. Romania smelled blood in the water, but had already opened secret negotiations with the Entente back in 1914, as Prime Minister Ion Ice Brătianu demanded Bukovina, the Banat, Transylvania, Cristiana, and Maramureș, according to Glenn E. Torrey's The Romanian Battlefront in World War I. With Serbia already crushed by late 1914, which historically spooked Bucharest out of joining the Entente in 1915, the war seemed to be over quickly, so, just as historically, Brătianu elected to keep them out of the war rather than accept the Entente's suicide offer to enter in 5 weeks. To make matters worse, Germany and Austria enabled Bulgarian and Ottoman threats to keep Romanian neutrality. In 1916, the aged Austro-Hungaro-Croatian emperor's health began to fail, so he wished to see the fruits of his labor before he passed, so he pushed for a peace with Russia and Italy. Despite his army's insistence that they should continue into Russia, as they already had taken Kiev while their German counterparts had control of Riga, just give them a few more months and Crimea would be theirs, as was almost always the case with Austria, the politicians in Vienna won out over their commanders in the field. This was not the devolved and unsophisticated quasi-military dictatorship of Germany, after all. Tsar Nicholas II was also eager to end the conflict and retain his throne, something Franz Joseph wanted to protect. After all, they needed a reliable partner in the east. Once Germany was notified of the negotiations, they sent supplies into Finland, igniting the Finnish Civil War, hoping to add another puppet to their name at the last minute. A ceasefire was eventually agreed to, and within a few weeks, the Treaty of Warsaw was signed by the Triple Monarchy, Germany, the Ottoman Empire, and Russia. The Caucasus Front saw minor Russian gains as the Ottomans needed to redirect their own attention to the massive series of Arab revolts that broke out across their empire, so ceding some Armenian territory was acceptable. This land was then combined with other Russian territory to create the totally independent Kingdom of Armenia, conveniently ruled by, guess who? Nicholas II! So basically the Armenian version of Congress Poland. As Austria did the lion's share of the fighting, they received most of the benefits, with the clear division emerging between the Habsburg and Hohenzollern puppets. Austria-Hungary Croatia earned Poland, Ukraine, and Moldavia, while Germany got border expansions for colonization, Lithuania, Courland and Semigalia, Livonia, and Estonia. To cement Habsburg control of their new kingdoms, family members were placed on the thrones of Ukraine with Archduke Wilhelm Franz, an extreme Ukrainian nationalist who resided in Galicia, while Archduke Eugen, one of their best generals and the Grand Master of the Teutonic Order, became the King of Moldavia. Poland was more difficult. Franz Joseph had no intentions of taking the crown of Poland for himself, but his heir, Karl, wanted to do so, and Hungary was quite keen of that. But Franz Joseph worried that the size of Poland would be too difficult to absorb into Austria, and giving it Galicia would ignite tensions with Ukraine, so it was decided that they would become a separate kingdom. The best candidate was Archduke Charles Stephen of Austria, a native Galician who spoke fluent Polish and whose daughters married into Polish nobility. He was also the father of the new Ukrainian king Wilhelm Franz, though he was a Polish nationalist, not a Ukrainian one. His son was a bit of a rebel. Both Germany and the Triple Monarchy had custom unions and military control over their newly liberated nations of Eastern Europe. Despite the massive gains, many within the upper echelons of the Habsburg military were disappointed. Field Marshal Edward von Bochum-Ermolli famously retorted, "This is not peace, this is an armistice for 20 years." Although not officially part of negotiations, Finland had just finished its civil war, and many Germans expected that it would join their sphere, but Russia made it very clear that that could not happen. To prevent such a development, Russia worked with Sweden, so the roughly 13% Swedish population of Finland offered the crown of Finland to Prince Wilhelm of Sweden, Duke of Södermanland, the second son of King Gustav V. Prince Wilhelm was hurriedly rushed into Finland and ratified by the parliament, thus declared the king, maintaining Finland's neutrality, angering Germany. With Russia's exit, Italy began freaking out. How could they possibly handle the full might of Austria, who just steamrolled the Balkans and Russia?
All that for a drop of blood.
Franz Joseph opened tentative peace discussions with the Italians, but the British learned of this and bribed the Italians to stay in the fight, mirroring the UK's bribes to Russia historically. Once it became clear that Italy was not ready to learn the lesson, there would be no peace. Austria was ready to fully dismantle Italy. Make sure to come back for future videos to see the fates of Italy, France, Britain, and the rest of the globe, all in the world of Doppeladler. I want to make Doppeladler into a Hearts of Iron 4 mod like Kaiserreich, so I'll need help from all of you to make this a reality. If you're interested, join my Discord server to get more info. Special thanks to John Not Real Name for helping me. This video wouldn't be possible without his help. I also want to shout out my younger brother, whose birthday is this week and absolutely loves the Habsburgs. I hope you liked the video. Happy birthday, bro. Anyways, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. You can watch another great one here. See ya.